Elena stood at the doorway of the living room, her small suitcase beside her. The rain outside beat hard against the windows, filling the silence in the house. Her clothes were still damp from the tears she had been holding back all morning. Mrs. Carter sat on the couch with her arms crossed, her eyes sharp and cold. "Get out," she said flatly. "Rent is due. You've lived here long enough." Elena blinked in disbelief. "Rent?" Her voice shook. "I thought this was our home." Mrs. Carter gave a short, bitter laugh. "My name's on the deed, not yours. You're just a guest here. And your time is up." Elena looked at Marcus, her husband, who sat on the other side of the room. He didn't meet her eyes. His phone screen reflected in his glasses as he scrolled slowly, pretending not to hear. "Marcus," she whispered. "Say something." He didn't. The silence was louder than any shout could have been. Elena's throat tightened. She had lived in this house for 3 years, cooked in that kitchen, cleaned every corner, tried her best to please the woman who now threw her out like a stranger. She had called this place home. "Please," she tried again, her voice breaking. "We said we'd build our future together." "You said." Mrs. Carter cut her off. "He said a lot of things, dear. But love doesn't pay bills. You've been living off my son for too long." Elena took a deep breath. "I work. You know I do. I've been trying. Mrs. Carter's voice rose. "Selling trinkets online? That's not work. That's a hobby. You should be thankful I even let you stay this long." The words stung like fire. Elena's hands trembled as she picked up her suitcase. The rain outside grew heavier, a gray wall waiting for her. She turned to Marcus one last time, hoping for a word, a glance, anything. But he stayed still, his face blank, his phone still in his hand. "I thought you loved me," she whispered. He swallowed, still not looking at her. "Maybe this is for the best," he said softly. The room spun for a moment. It felt like the ground had fallen away beneath her feet. Elena nodded slowly, forcing back her tears. "All right," she said. "If that's what you both want." She turned toward the door. Mrs. Carter smirked slightly, satisfied. As Elena stepped out into the pouring rain, the cold water hit her skin, washing away the last bit of warmth she had left from this house. But something else rose inside her, something fierce and quiet. She didn't cry. Not this time. She gripped her suitcase tighter and walked down the driveway, her heart pounding, her mind whispering only one thing. One day, I'll never have to beg for a home again. Behind her, the door closed with a sharp click, ending one chapter and starting another. Elena met Marcus at university. She was quiet, focused, and came from a small town where people worked hard but lived simple lives. Marcus was different, charming, confident, and from a rich family. He had a car, nice clothes, and an easy smile that drew people in. When he first spoke to her, she couldn't believe someone like him would notice someone like her. They started spending time together in the library, studying late, sharing snacks, and talking about dreams. Marcus used to tell her, "One day, I'll build us a big house. You'll never have to worry about anything." Elena believed him. She believed in his warmth, his laughter, and his promises. When they got married after graduation, things seemed perfect. Marcus's family didn't fully approve, especially his mother, Mrs. Carter, but Marcus insisted he loved Elena. Mrs. Carter smiled politely at the wedding, but her eyes stayed cold. After the wedding, Marcus told Elena they would stay at his mother's house, just for a few months, until they got their own place. It sounded reasonable at the time. But a few months turned into a year, and then 2. Living with Mrs. Carter was like walking on eggshells. Every day came with new criticism. "You don't cook like I do. You're too quiet. You don't know how to take care of a man." The words came softly at first, then sharper as time went on. Elena tried to please her. She cleaned the house, helped in the kitchen, smiled even when her heart hurt. But nothing was ever enough. Marcus often stayed out late, working or spending time with friends. When Elena told him how his mother spoke to her, he would sigh and say, "She just wants what's best for us. Don't take it personally." Sometimes Elena wondered if he truly didn't see it, or if he just didn't care to face it. He was a man who hated conflict, and silence became his shield. Mrs. Carter's control over Marcus was strong. She made all the family decisions, from money to where they lived. She saw Marcus as her greatest achievement, and Elena as a mistake he needed to correct. "You'll never amount to anything without my son," she once said during breakfast, her tone casual, but her words cutting deep. Elena smiled weakly, pretending not to hear. But inside, something broke a little more each time. Still she stayed. Not because she was weak, but because she loved Marcus. She believed love could change things. She believed maybe one day, Mrs. Carter would see her worth. But that day never came. Her friends noticed her fading smile. "Why don't you leave?" they asked. "You don't deserve this." Elena would shake her head. "It's not that easy," she'd say. "Where would I go? What would people say?" The thought of being judged or pitted scared her more than the pain she lived with every day. But she didn't stop dreaming. Deep inside, a small fire still burned. The dream of having something that was hers. A home. A business. A life where she didn't have to ask permission to exist. She began making jewelry at night, bracelets, earrings, and necklaces. At first, she sold them to classmates and online. It was slow, but she didn't give up. She worked quietly, saving every small bit she earned. Sometimes she hid money in old books or inside her pillowcase so no one would find it. Every sale gave her a little strength. Every kind message from a customer reminded her that she could build something on her own. But she couldn't tell Marcus. He didn't like when she talked about her little business. He said it was a distraction. "You don't need to work," he often told her. "I'll take care of you." Those words, which once sounded loving, now felt like a cage. Still, she smiled and kept working behind the scenes. She built her brand slowly, posting her handmade jewelry online, learning from YouTube videos, and studying late into the night when everyone else was asleep. Mrs. Carter would see her at the table with her beads and materials and scoff. "Look at you wasting time again," she'd say. "If you put this effort into being a proper wife, maybe you'd earn some respect in this house." Elena said nothing. She had learned silence. Not as weakness, but as survival. Every word of insult became motivation. Every night of tears became fuel. And though no one could see it, something inside her was changing. She was no longer the timid girl who entered that house years ago. She was becoming stronger, steadier, more determined. Mrs. Carter saw only a quiet daughter-in-law who obeyed and endured. Marcus saw only a wife who kept to herself. But neither of them saw the truth. That Elena was slowly building a world of her own. One they would one day regret underestimating. That it was a quiet morning. The kind that usually began with the smell of coffee and the sound of Mrs. Carter's voice on the phone. Elena was in the kitchen, cleaning the breakfast dishes, when she heard her mother-in-law speaking in the next room. At first, she didn't pay attention. But then she heard her name. "Marcus," Mrs. Carter said firmly, her voice low but sharp. "Divorce her. She's draining you. I'll find you someone better. Someone who fits this family." Elena froze. The dish slipped from her hand and clattered into the sink. Her heart pounded. She stood still, hoping she had heard wrong. But Mrs. Carter continued. "You've carried her long enough. She's holding you back. I can talk to my lawyer tomorrow and get the papers ready." Elena felt her stomach twist. She wanted to run in and defend herself, but her legs wouldn't move. Instead, she pressed her back against the wall, her breath shaking. Marcus's voice came next, quiet, tired. "Mom, please. It's not that simple." Mrs. Carter's tone softened slightly. "Oh, Marcus. You deserve better. You can't keep letting her pull you down. Don't worry, I'll handle everything." There was silence for a moment. Then Marcus said nothing more. Elena walked back to her room slowly, her heart aching. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. All this time, she thought things might get better. That Marcus would see how much she tried, how much she loved him. But now she saw it clearly. She wasn't wanted. Not by his mother. Not even by him. That night, Marcus came into their room. His face looked pale, his eyes tired. He sat down beside her, avoiding her gaze. "Elena," he began quietly, "Mom's right. Maybe we need some space. Things have been heavy lately." She turned to him slowly. "Space." Her voice cracked. "You mean you agree with her?" He sighed. "Just for a while. Maybe it'll help us think. It's not forever." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a paper. "Mom asked her lawyer to draft this. It's just a temporary separation letter. You can stay with a friend for a few weeks." Elena stared at the paper. It looked so official, her name printed beside his, the cold language of law between two people who once promised forever. Her hands trembled as she took it. "You couldn't even talk to me before doing this?" she whispered. "You let her make this decision for us?" "Elena, please don't make this harder," Marcus said softly. "I just think this is best for now." She looked at him, really looked at him, and realized the man sitting in front of her was no longer the one she fell in love with. The warmth was gone. The loyalty had faded. All that was left was fear and control. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. "All right," she said quietly. "If that's what you both want." She stood, went to the closet, and took out her small suitcase, the same one she had arrived with years ago. Marcus didn't stop her. He didn't even look up as she packed. When she was done, she walked to the door. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said softly. He only nodded. Outside, the rain had started again. The wind was cold, but she didn't care. She dragged her suitcase down the wet street until she reached the bus stop. The streetlights flickered in the distance. Her clothes were soaked, but she didn't move. She just sat on the bench, staring at her phone screen through blurry eyes. Her hands shook as she typed a message to her closest friend. "I think I'm done begging for a home that doesn't want me." She hit send, then looked up at the dark sky. The rain fell harder, but for the first time in a long while she didn't feel weak. She felt empty, but also strangely free. Something inside her shifted, quietly, like a flame being lit in the dark. She wiped her tears, lifted her suitcase, and whispered to herself, "I'll start again. This time for me." That night, Elena didn't just leave a house. She left behind the version of herself that always begged to be accepted. Elena found a small apartment at the edge of the city, one bedroom, old furniture, and cracked walls, but it was hers. The first night she moved in, she sat on the floor with a cup of instant noodles and whispered to herself, "This is my beginning." The room was cold and quiet, but she finally felt peace. No harsh words, no judging eyes, no silence full of disappointment. Just her and her thoughts. She spent the first few weeks crying sometimes, other times just sitting by the window, wondering how everything had fallen apart. But every time she looked at her jewelry-making tools, the beads, wires, and stones, she reminded herself that she still had something to build from. So she began again. During the day, she took small online orders and delivered them by hand. At night, she watched free business and marketing videos on her old phone. She didn't have much money, but she had time, and she was determined to use it wisely. Every cruel word Mrs. Carter had ever said, "You'll never make it. You're nothing without my son. You'll come crawling back," became fuel for her heart. She replayed them in her mind while she worked, and instead of crying, she used them as motivation. Some nights, she worked until dawn, her fingers sore from bending wire and stringing tiny stones. But when she saw her small income grow little by little, she smiled. It wasn't much yet, but it was hers. No one could take it from her. Months passed. Elena learned how to take good photos of her jewelry, how to write descriptions that caught people's attention, and how to post regularly on social media. She reached out to a few small influencers, sending them her handmade pieces for free. Slowly, people began to notice her brand. Orders increased. Compliments started pouring in from customers. "Elena, your work is beautiful. Your designs are so unique. I can feel the love in every piece." Those messages became her new source of strength. Back in her old home, Marcus's life was changing too, but not for the better. His job became unstable, his debts grew, and his mother's control over him tightened. Mrs. Carter blamed everyone except herself. "If you had listened to me earlier, we wouldn't be struggling," she told Marcus. He missed the calmness Elena brought to his life, but his pride kept him from reaching out. Mrs. Carter would often say proudly, "She'll come crawling back soon. You'll see." But Elena didn't. 2 years passed. What started as a tiny jewelry business in a small apartment grew into a full online store with hundreds of orders every month. Elena hired 2 helpers, young women who reminded her of herself when she first started. She taught them how to design, how to stay strong, and how to believe in their own worth. Her small room turned into a real workspace. There were shelves full of jewelry boxes, shipping materials, and shining pieces ready to be sent across the country. One day, she sat in her new office, signing a contract with a big fashion boutique that wanted to feature her designs. When she looked at the name printed on the agreement, Elena Carter Designs, She smiled quietly. She had kept the last name that once made her feel small, but now, it gave her power. With the money she earned, she began saving again, just like before. But this time it wasn't for survival. It was for growth. After months of searching, she bought a house. A simple, beautiful home with a garden and sunlight in every room. The funny thing was, it stood on the same street where Mrs. Carter's mansion was. When Elena signed the final papers, she couldn't help but laugh softly. Life had a strange way of turning pain into poetry. On moving day, she stood outside her new gate and took a deep breath. The air felt lighter here. She could see her old mother-in-law's house from a distance, but she didn't feel anger anymore, just peace. At night, she sat on her porch, looking up at the stars. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who begged to belong, who waited for someone's approval. That girl was gone. Elena had built her own life, her own name, her own home. But sometimes when she lay in bed, a small ache still remained. A part of her still wondered if Marcus ever regretted letting her go, or if Mrs. Carter ever realized the harm she caused. That pain was still there, small but present like an old scar. Still, she refused to let it control her. Her business continued to grow. She traveled to trade shows, met new people, and even began mentoring young women who wanted to start their own small businesses. People admired her confidence and success, but only she knew the tears and struggles behind that smile. One afternoon, as she looked out her window, she saw Mrs. Carter's house in the distance. For a brief moment, she wondered what they would say if they knew who lived just a few doors away. Would they be proud? Angry? Ashamed? Elena sighed and smiled. It didn't matter. She wasn't building this life to prove them wrong. She was building it to prove herself right. Her heart was no longer full of pain, but of quiet strength. The wounds had healed, leaving behind lessons. She whispered to herself, I didn't need their approval. I just needed to believe in me. And as the sun set, casting a warm glow across her new home, Elena knew that this was just the beginning of a much brighter chapter, one built not on anyone's permission, but on her own courage. 2 years after Elena rebuilt her life, the Carter family's world began to fall apart. The big house that once stood as a symbol of pride was now filled with arguments, unpaid bills, and silence. Mrs. Carter had made poor financial choices, fancy parties, unnecessary renovations, and loans she couldn't repay. Marcus's business had failed too, and with no savings left, they began falling behind on mortgage payments. For months, they tried to hide it. Mrs. Carter refused to admit that her perfect life was cracking. Everything will be fine, she told Marcus again and again. But deep down, she knew things were falling apart faster than she could control. Then one morning, a letter arrived, a foreclosure notice. The bank was taking the house. Mrs. Carter's hands shook as she read it. Her face turned pale, her pride collapsing in silence. Marcus sat beside her, staring at the paper. What are we going to do, Mom? He whispered. She didn't answer. For the first time in her life, she had no plan, no power, no control. A few weeks later, the house went up for auction. Buyers came and went. Mrs. Carter prayed that someone kind might let them rent it back, but the real world had no room for pride or pity. What she didn't know was that far away, in a tall office building across the city, Elena was sitting with her lawyer. Her business, now a major jewelry brand, was doing better than ever. Her lawyer placed a file in front of her. The Carter house is being auctioned, he said. It's a prime property. Would you like to proceed with the purchase through your company? Elena paused, looking at the photos in the file. The house, that house, the one she was thrown out of years ago. For a moment, old memories flickered in her mind. The rain, the humiliation, the suitcase in her hand, Marcus's silence. Then slowly, a calm smile touched her lips. Yes, she said quietly. Buy it. The deal went through under her company's name. Elena Carter Designs Limited. Mrs. Carter never knew who the real buyer was. A few days later, an official eviction notice arrived at the Carter home. Mrs. Carter read it in disbelief. What is this? She shouted, waving the paper at Marcus. They're saying we have to leave in 2 weeks. How dare they? Marcus read it carefully. It says the new owner has already taken full possession. The company name is Elena Carter Designs. Mrs. Carter frowned. That name sounds familiar, but it can't be her. Marcus stayed quiet. His heart beat faster. A strange feeling crept through him, fear mixed with guilt. The next morning, Mrs. Carter stormed into the realtor's office, dragging Marcus with her. "I need to speak to the new owner," she demanded. "This is a mistake. I'm not leaving my house." The realtor tried to calm her. "Ma'am, the property has been sold legally. The new owner has every right. Bring them here," she shouted. "I'll speak to them myself." Just then the office door opened. Everyone turned. A woman walked in, tall, elegant, confident. She wore a cream suit, simple jewelry, and a calm smile. Mrs. Carter froze. Marcus's eyes widened. It was Elena. For a few seconds no one spoke. The silence was thick, almost unreal. "Elena," Marcus whispered, almost afraid of the answer. She looked at him briefly, then turned to the realtor. "I believe there's a problem with my new property?" Mrs. Carter's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her face drained of color as the truth hit her. Elena was the new owner. Elena looked directly at her, her voice soft but steady. "I believe I gave you 2 weeks to move out." Mrs. Carter stammered. You can't do this. This is my house." Elena's lips curved into a small, calm smile. "Your name's not on the deed anymore," she said gently. "You're just a guest." The same words Mrs. Carter had once said to her. Marcus looked down, shame written all over his face. "Elena," he whispered, "you bought our house?" Elena turned to him, her eyes kind but distant. "My company did," she said softly. He swallowed hard. "Why?" "To get back at us." She shook her head. "No, Marcus. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I could." Then she looked back at Mrs. Carter, who stood trembling, unable to speak. Elena stepped closer and said the words slowly, each one gentle but full of power. "Rent is due." And Mrs. Carter had once used to throw her out. The room went completely silent. Mrs. Carter's eyes filled with tears, but no words came. Marcus stood frozen, his pride broken. Elena turned toward the realtor. "Please prepare the official rental documents. They can stay temporarily under legal agreement," she said calmly. Then she looked at the two of them one last time. "I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I just came to finish what was started." Without another word, she walked out, her head high, her steps graceful. As the door closed behind her, Mrs. Carter sank into a chair, her hands shaking. For the first time, she understood what it felt like to lose control, to be at someone else's mercy. Marcus stared at the floor, his voice barely a whisper. "She really made it, didn't she?" Mrs. Carter nodded slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Yes, she did." And for the first time, the house that once belonged to them now stood as a reminder that pride can fall, and that the woman they once called weak had become the strongest of them all. Elena sat across from her lawyer, holding the signed rental agreement in her hands. The house that once threw her out was now legally hers. Yet, she felt no joy in seeing Mrs. Carter's trembling signature at the bottom of the page, only calm peace. When she arrived at the house that morning, Mrs. Carter and Marcus were standing by the door, their boxes half-packed. Mrs. Carter's pride had clearly taken a blow, but her voice was softer than ever. Marcus looked down, ashamed, as if afraid to meet her eyes. "You don't have to go," Elena said quietly, surprising them both. "You can stay for now. But this time, it'll be under a rental agreement. No one throws anyone out again." Mrs. Carter blinked, confused. "You're letting us stay?" Elena nodded. "I'm not here to take revenge. I just want peace. I worked too hard to carry bitterness." The words hung in the air like a gentle truth. Marcus's shoulders shook. "Elena," he said, voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I was weak. I let her control me. I should have stood by you." Elena looked at him, not with anger, but with quiet strength. "You were scared, Marcus. I understand that now. But fear and love can't live in the same house." He lowered his head, tears falling freely. Mrs. Carter wiped her eyes too. A woman who once ruled with pride now humbled by her own choices. "You were always stronger than I thought," Mrs. Carter whispered. "I see that now." Elena smiled faintly. "You just never gave me space to show it." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. A kind of closure that didn't come from shouting or revenge, but from growth. In the weeks that followed, Elena continued to run her business, bigger now, more respected than ever. Her new home just down the street was filled with light, plants, and laughter. Sometimes, she'd see Mrs. Carter tending the flowers outside her rented house. They would exchange polite smiles, not as enemies, but as two women who had learned different kinds of strength. One evening, Marcus stopped by her new place to return some old photo albums. He stood by the door, looking unsure. "You've built something amazing," he said softly. "You deserve every bit of it." Elena thanked him with a nod. "We all get what we build," she said. "Some of us build walls. Some of us build homes." As he walked away, Elena closed the door gently, her heart light and free. She looked around her cozy living room, her own space, her own peace. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a guest in someone else's life. She belonged, not because of who loved her, but because of who she had become. And that was her real victory. Elena walked slowly through the quiet living room. The same room where, years ago, she had stood with her suitcase while being told to leave. The walls were still the same color, but everything felt different now. The pain that once lived here was gone. What remained was calm, strength, and peace. She stopped by the mantel and placed a framed photo there, a picture of her with her team from her jewelry company. They were smiling, celebrating their success. It was her new family, built from love, hard work, and trust. For a moment, she looked around the room one last time. She remembered every tear, every insult, every night she doubted herself. But now those memories no longer hurt. They were lessons, proof of how far she had come. In a soft voice, as if speaking to her younger self, she said, "You made it." As she turned to leave, sunlight poured through the window, filling the space with warmth. She paused at the door, her hand resting on the knob, and smiled. In her mind, her voice echoed like a quiet truth. Sometimes you don't need to fight for a seat at their table. Build your own. She stepped outside, closing the door gently behind her. The sound was peaceful. Not an ending, but a beginning. The camera lingered on the sunlight, touching the photo on the mantel, symbolizing hope, freedom, and a new chapter. Elena walked down the street, her posture strong, her heart light. No revenge, no anger, only grace. And as the screen faded to black, the audience felt the final message, that true power isn't about winning against others, but finding peace within yourself. Hi besties. Sparkling Heart, thank you so much for watching till the end. If Elena's story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. Bye. Waving hand sparkles.